Welcome to Truth is Here. I'm Mubbina Hashmi. Today is the 10th of July 2018 and I'm making this video from my bedroom here in Bristol, in Eastville, Bristol that is. Most of you will know that Bristol is in the UK. Now, why have I decided to upload these videos? I'll give you a little recap of the main theme, which is about truth. Truth is Here, the title of my YouTube channel. I've been the unfortunate victim of UK legislation known as the Section 60 Pharmacy Order, or at least that is the main focus of my videos. This piece of legislation has actually legalized monitoring members of the pharmacy profession. I myself trained to be a pharmacist in 1998 and 1999 in a hospital in Carmarthen, and so I am not currently a registered pharmacist. I'm not a pharmacist, but in the past I have been one. So the profession legalized monitoring individuals in the profession so that they could keep an eye on any individuals who might be dangerous. And I make reference here to Dr. Harold Shipman, who, going back some years earlier, about the same time as my pre-registration training, in that year he was actually arrested, having murdered approximately 250 patients. The UK government decided that henceforth we do not want a Dr. Harold Shipman prototype, be he or she a medical doctor, a nurse, a dentist, a pharmacist. We do not want somebody like that unleashed out in the world of patients to cause havoc, to injure, to kill. And so that's where the legislation came in, and formally monitoring people was legalized. However, prior, the establishments admit that they were in fact already monitoring people, and this is a very, very significant point that will, I'm sure, create massive media attention if it's totally understood and embraced for what it is. I will be touching upon this point that I'm trying to explain to you now, the informal monitoring that took place prior to the formal monitoring mechanisms, which ensued later on from, for example, my own personal professional regulatory body of pharmacy, the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain, in abbreviation the RPSGB, which was then succeeded by the GPHC, or the General Pharmaceutical Council. They regulate the pharmacy profession, but every other healthcare profession also has a similar body that does the same thing. And you've probably worked out these organisations are supposed to regulate the profession and ensure that standards are maintained at the highest possible level. Now, whilst I was training in 1998 and 1999 in this rural district general hospital in Carmarthen in West Wales, I became the victim of very serious undermining, bullying, harassment, discrimination, call it what you will, ensuing from the most senior members of the department, the chief pharmacist and his two second-in-charge principal pharmacists, who of course requested that their subordinates, my colleagues, also ran errands for them and joined in the strategy to undermine me and to really cause massive distress in my life. When this all began, Dr. Harold Shipman had yet to be arrested, but I was already being bullied, harassed, and turned into a psychopath. What kind of comments did I have to listen to? Well, in brief, they were along the lines of that there was something in my private medical notes that had been leaked, I personally believe maliciously and with intent to harm, at that NHS trust in Carmarthen, but I have reason to believe, because I've had information earlier as well, going back to the University of London, where I was studying to do my degree, prior, a few years earlier to 1998, that information had in fact also been disseminated amongst students and academic staff, although I wasn't at the receiving end of a comprehensive taunting process or any detailed information. I did actually get the information that my confidential information had leaked, but not with any detail. However, here, so sorry if my sentences and paragraphs are rather long, and then I make my point after going into much detail. I'll try and not do that, but sometimes I find I have to in order to make sure I don't leave anything out. Coming back to Carmarthen, where this information was somehow more detailed and more explicit and more direct, I became the recipient of information that my privy information had leaked, something to do with my earlier years as a child, and the taunting included comments such as I had ADHD as a child, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Now, I don't think I ever did. I don't remember being diagnosed as such, but I do remember experiencing significant trauma whilst I was 3 in my nursery. So these comments didn't sort of take me by a massive, how shall I put it, surprise. I wasn't totally unaware of what they were trying to say. Thus, the comments were received at my end as doubly and trebly offensive and very hurtful. So there was the ADHD comment. There was the comment that I had schizophrenia as a child, that I would grow up to have schizophrenia on account of trauma that I'd endured as a child. There were comments that I was sexually abused. There were comments that I was even adopted, would you believe it? I have 2 middle names, you see, one of which my father stopped using some years earlier because it was a tribal name, and our other name, which he preferred to use, was more of a family name. And although I still do have both names, the one we actually operate on is the family name of Hashmi. So I think somebody had picked up on this and were trying to say that that was evidence that I was adopted. I mean, I'm not sure, but it seems like they were trying to reconcile the information they had in front of them with whatever they were trying to reconcile it with the medical records. They were trying to paint a picture that would explain to them what my story was. Now, that's not how you do it. It's really not how you do it. And of course they knew that they were being very unkind. I do remember going back in my nursery years, trauma and teachers and situations that I was in. And I remember being very unhappy at that very young, tender age of 3. So when they started making those comments, I couldn't play totally stupid and think, oh, maybe they're not talking to me, maybe they're talking to somebody else. Not when they kept doing it for a whole year, and not when a friend of mine telephoned me from London and told me that she suspected that my then paediatric, would you believe it, a paediatric pharmacist specialist tutor who'd chosen me and was very keen to have me, that my friend had heard that she had access to my medical notes. So it doesn't surprise me that everything did actually end up making a lot of sense, and every single hunch that I had came to surface in paperwork as well. In fact, things were published. Let me just show you something which I have actually shown in other videos. This is an article written by a man known as Mr. Graham Saville-Edwards, who is a pharmacist and a barrister. So what else can they do? They can get your medical records without your permission. So that's what my suspicion was. That's what my friend told me, and that's what was published years later, when they finally legalized what they were already doing during my training year. Shocking stuff. Now, that was shocking, yes, but what was to follow was far more shocking. And I'm going to reiterate the case of the late Marwa El-Sherbini, who was dubbed the headscarf martyr, or headscarf courtroom martyr.